Already started to cook the spinach, and I've just let it thaw out as much as I could. If it's still a little frozen, that's okay because it'll break up in your skillet rather quickly. Now I have used one of the skillets that has a treated surface so that we don't have to use any additional oil or butter or anything like that. Now that I've cooked this spinach till it's really pretty dry, that saves that process. It's not too much fun if you cook it in water, then you've got to squeeze all that excess water out. This eliminates that step. So I'm going to add the onions and turn my heat up a little bit more here. Add the onions and my mushrooms, and then I'm going to saute that for a while. And then I'll add my rice to that mixture. Now, as I mentioned, you can do this one of two ways. If you're going to do it in a long roll and bake it in the oven, you can either use the toothpicks or you can use these, they call them hors d'oeuvre bamboo sticks. And they're longer than a toothpick and they're pointed on both ends so they go in really nicely and hold things together. You can either do it that way for cooking the flank steak whole, or you can tie it with a cooking twine. If you're going to use the second option, which is really very quick, because if you're doing it in the long roll in the oven, it's going to take about an hour and a half. But there's another option where you can slice. After the roll is completed, you can slice off 1-inch sections from the flank steak and then just broil it. And here we're talking maybe 10 minutes. So if you really need something quick, it will work that way very nicely. But then you're going to want to use your bamboo skewers here, or if you have to use toothpicks. Be sure you soak them in water first, because otherwise they're going to burn quite a bit on you while you are broiling them. Now this is cooking nicely. I'm going to add my 1 cup of cooked rice. Now let that saute a little bit here. We have a little gravy mixture here that we're going to put on the stuffed flank steak when we bake it in the oven, and that consists of a regular can of cream of mushroom soup, a 1/2 cup of water, and we have 1 bouillon cube. So we're going to get that started.
This flank steak never had it so good.
And then we'll just let that heat up while we continue to saute our stuffing mixture and actually stuff our flank steak. Now, one other ingredient that needs to be added to the stuffing mixture is salt. I've used a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. If you don't want to use any salt because you're on a salt-restricted diet, then leave it out. Or if you like it a little bit saltier, add a little bit more. You are going to get a little bit of saltiness from the gravy mixture here as it cooks. So perhaps a 1/2 teaspoon would be enough, and if your guests need to add more salt, they can do that at the table. As always, whatever your family likes is what's the best thing to do. Okay, this stuffing mixture looks like it's just about ready. So what I'm going to ask you to do, John, is we're going to move this down and move our flank steak over so I can get at that a little bit easier for the actual stuffing. Thank you.
It smells good.
Okay, we've turned that off now. And as I mentioned, a little mallet if we need to. We can just pound that down so it's nice and even. So I'll start putting our stuffing mixture in. And you can bring it pretty close to the sides, but it's probably a much better idea to not put it too close to, let's see, I think I'm going to use, yes, I'll use that as my end. Not too close to the end, or it is going to start coming out on you when you cook it. Now, if you choose to cook it whole in the oven, you want to, when it's all stuffed and rolled up and securely tied or fastened with the picks, you want to brown that in your skillet, sear it in your skillet till it's brown on all sides. And then you're going to put it in your roasting pan, add your gravy mixture, and then bake that in the oven if you like, or you can bake it on the top of the stove. And that's what I did with the one today. I did it on the top of the stove, and you just have it barely bubbling. And you cook that for about an hour and a half, and it's going to get really nice and tender because you'll have that pan covered, and it'll really be great. Or if you're going to use it for broiling, you just put it in the broiler, take it out when it's finished, and pour your gravy that you've prepared on top of the stove over your slices. If you don't want the gravy, you don't have to
I like
use
that
that either.
latter suggestion for a quick meal.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it'll come out about the same, but it seems like the slower you cook,
It's a
though,
little bit different taste.
yeah.
It's a little bit different taste. And then we're just going to start rolling this. Now sometimes when you're going to be putting this on top of the stove or in the oven to bake, this size is, and browning it, it's a little bit difficult to handle, to deal with, and you might not have a pan that's large enough. In that case, my suggestion is after you have it either tied or the toothpicks inserted into it, that you do cut it in half. It's going to be much easier for you to handle. And it looks like we're really going to get quite a large number of servings out of this particular one.
I would say
And
you
we're-
could serve 6 people with that, just by looking at it.
Yes,
Yeah, easily.
and your normal serving size would be about
Yeah.
2 slices. Now what you want to do, and I'm going to move this up a little bit closer here so you can get a good shot because I'm working from the back side, is be sure that you get the top piece of meat and go through to the other side.
Your other suggestion too with the cooking twine.
Yes.
Which is about the same distance, then you could
Right,
cut right in between the twine.
and that
then.
sometimes is a little bit easier to do if you're going to do it on top of the stove in the longer method, because when you're browning, you do have to be careful if you're using these longer bamboo sticks, is that when you're browning and you go like this, you'll have to pull them and make some adjustments so you can get that brown, the entire roll browned.
Be sure if you use the shorter toothpicks to always warn the people, okay?
Whatever
Right,
size you
okay.
use, if you're not going to remove them, then please tell your guests so there are no accidents. And one of the great advantages of the toothpicks too is it keeps it in the beautiful pinwheel shape, and that's what's so beautiful about the presentation for this particular stuffed flank steak. We're going to get quite a lot from this one. This was a beautiful
Yeah,
flank
mine even
steak.
go better than 6.
Yeah.
Probably go about 10 if
You can
3 don't
usually
eat.
figure for the average one minimum of 4. It'll depend on what size flank steak you get. Now let's see. I think we can maybe get one more in here. That'll be a smaller one for the little one. Now,
Yeah, okay.
would you give me your knife, John, and I'll cut a section off here just so they can see what this is going to look like if they're cutting them off to broil them.
Oh, yes.
Get quite
Oops.
through. Get that nice, pretty green and white and the brown from the mushrooms. There.
Beautiful.
And I have one that's already been prepared.
I thought I smelled something else.
The oven method.
Ooh.
or on top of the stove, whichever you prefer. Here you've got your gravy already prepared, and there you would, after it's cooked, slice it just the same way I did, and when we are at the end of the show, we're going to show you both presentations. Okay?
That looks good enough to eat.
Yes, and our next item is going to be stuffed veal breast. To help us with our stuffed veal breast recipe, we have Marilyn King, who's John's wife. Welcome, Marilyn.
Thank you.
Tell us where you got this recipe from.
Well, this was a recipe of John's mother and his handed down to his two sisters, and now I also make it.
Oh, great. Now, tell us what the stuffing part of the recipe consists of.
Well, it consists of 1 package of stuffing that's herb flavored, and it's 1.5 cups of water that are boiled, 1/4 cup of butter or margarine or oil, 1 beef bouillon cube, and 1 small chopped onion,
And we've got some celery here.
2 ribs of celery chopped, 1 egg, and 1 apple that's grated.
Okay, now you've got your water and all cooked and your butter melted. Where do we go from here with the celery and the onion?
Yes, we're going to place that in.
Okay. We're a little bit short on time, but if we don't get everything done in this segment, we will be sure to give detailed instructions with our recipes today.
Give that a stir and then pour it over the stuffing.
Oh boy, that certainly is easy, isn't it?
Just like Ma used to make.
Okay.
And stir this up. And we didn't cook the celery and the onions too long because we like it crunchy.
Oh, great.
Okay, and then you can add,
All right, I'll give you a little hand here. Add this grated apple.
Apple.
Now that's going to be nice and flavorful. I think that has another reason too, doesn't it?
yes, it holds the stuffing together.
Oh, good. Now we used the cube stuffing. Was it all right if you used the kind that's more the crumb?
Yes, you can use either, whichever your family or you prefer.
Great.
And that we just will mix that all up.
Okay, well, while you're doing that, why don't we have John show us what we do with this breast of veal, and some might say, well, this was on beef. What are we doing with the veal? Explain that to us.
Veal, as we know, is just young cattle. It's a calf, and this veal breast recipe, just like I am, I was a depression baby. I consider this a depression baby also because this is when it really got very popular because it was an economical piece of meat. What I'm doing here, Bonnie, is I'm cleaning this out. Now you could just leave, like we did on the flank steak before, just kind of make a pocket in there and you could stuff it. However, I'm taking and I'm going to remove this whole piece of meat off this breast here, as you see.
Okay.
Now, if you watch closely, this is kind of a secret we've been using to market. Now, just reverse this piece like this, and you got like a pita bread shell, see? And that's where the stuffing's going to go in, and what we're going to do is lay this right back on top, and then we'll probably tie it, with the stuffing in there.
Right. That looks wonderful. Would your butcher do that for you?
Yes, definitely. Ask them to have it done, and it should be no problem, no extra charge for it either. Just ask for a pocket in your veal breast or have it removed completely.
Okay, why don't we start to put some of that in there? And I'm assuming that if we have a little bit of the dressing left over, that we can put that in a nice container and bake it in the oven along with the veal breast. Oh, this is just going to be wonderful. And using those bread cubes makes it a lot easier, doesn't it?
Yes, than hand cutting a loaf of bread.
Right. Well, and it's got some nice herb flavoring in it too. So
Yes, that's the one we like the best, is the herb flavoring with the bouillon cube.
great.
And it's economical today also. That's the other secret to it.
Messing up.
Usually, but,
Okay, that's wonderful. We'll let you continue, and we're going to tell our audience now that if they'd like a copy of all of the recipes that we've prepared here today, if they will send us a self-addressed stamped business size envelope